Do you want me to start my point, or do you want to start yours first?
Go ahead and start.
All right, so we have base. Actually, base Aizen. Hold up. I'm bringing up this statement. Um, yeah, you're aware of when Aizen was about to send out like Wonder Wars on Yamamoto, and he's like, "Yeah, your Ryujin Jaka is the ultimate Zanbok Toe, and if they fought toe to toe, you'd probably win." So the way that I interpret this, I think that Aizen would be referring to like full power Yamamoto because he's saying that like toe to toe. So in that case, I think since Aizen's fully aware that Yamamoto is capable and he's willing to like let all of like the other captains in the area die, and he's willing to kill himself just to defeat Aizen for the sake of preserving the Soul Society. I think that like he'd also be willing to use his Bankai.
Um, Not necessarily, no, because we see what he does when he's willing to die at that point in time. He doesn't use his Bankai, he uses Enetsuji Goku. So that's a technique that can kill him and was stated to kill him. So no, I'm not quite convinced of that. Even then, I'm not sure why Aizen would know the full power of his Bankai, especially because Yamamoto himself said he had never used the full power of his Bankai even 1,000 years ago
When does he say that?
against Royd Lloyd.
That's like chapter like 509, right? Or no, that's like 505. Yeah, it's 505.
Yeah. I'm on the Viz translation right here. No, it should be 507, I think.
All right, I'm there.
The page is loading for me. Oh yeah. And then he says, feel for
This is
yourself
it's not.
whether it's
Yeah,
still the
he.
same as 1,000 years ago or not. But even then, they were just like, oh yeah, without a doubt, this is Ryujin Jaka. Said, has his Bankai really changed from 1,000 years ago? And then, hold on, here it is. Oh no, so it's probably not this one. It's probably a little further on. Nope, it's probably 509 then. But he does say, "Oh, I haven't used my full power even 1,000 years ago." Yeah, he says it's not that you didn't steal my Bankai, it's that you couldn't. And then he gives this wrong explanation for how they end up stealing a Bankai. He says, "You understand the power. Once that's complete, you're able to steal it." And he says that's why you're cautious when it comes to Ichigo. Hasn't been long since he acquired Bankai. He still has room to evolve. This is shown to be wrong. However, what is there is no contradiction with is him saying, "And for me, I haven't shown the true power of my Bankai even 1,000 years ago. You cannot steal what you do not understand." That last part is wrong, but the idea that he hasn't shown the full power of his Bankai even 1,000 years ago does not seem to be contradicted whatsoever.
Okay, so I think that he might not even be referring to physical power or like capabilities. I think that's just referring to the abilities of his Zanpakuto.
Some of these abilities are literally tie into the power of it.
I mean, like, yeah, because he was saying earlier that he had like like his Zanpakuto would release like combustible flames, like they would blow up on contact or something. But this obviously wasn't the case. Like in two chapters before, he was commenting, like narrating on how it's not the same as before, and it's like because it has different abilities, and it doesn't inherently mean that it has different physical capabilities or powers. It just means that it has different like little abilities, like being able to raise the dead, for instance.
Well, yeah, even how the sword works because he was confused. He was like, "Oh, the flame disappeared." He was like blatantly confused by that.
Yeah, but that I don't
So,
think that. Yeah, I don't
go
think
ahead.
that would inherently make it his like physical capabilities.
Well, no, the Bankai itself, the power of it is tied to Zanko no Tachi East and West. Zanko no Tachi East, or is that West? Whichever one is the one where it concentrates all of the flames into the tip, into the edge. So even if you say that the like it has different abilities, well, okay, East is literally the edge of his sword, what gives his sword its cutting power.
Uh-huh.
West is what gives his body that like invincible shield.
Right. But that's I don't think that's what he even well actually he did use like the like the armor before. So he like most likely did have this power as of before, but he just didn't use it against U-Haul. He might have like just not seen him that much as a threat at that point.
Yeah. So even if we're saying Aizen is referring to the Bankai, he should have no idea how powerful that Bankai is.
I think
Because
he would.
hold on, wait, because with the Bankai, we actually see that these abilities are tied to its power. Because that's what gives the Bankai its whenever you use it against Royd Lloyd. That's what makes it so dangerous, the sword itself, because it in his own words blows everything away without a trace. That's the description of existence erasure in versus battle wiki, but you know.
Mhm. But wouldn't that? I think that would just apply to like the quote unquote existence erasure part, wouldn't it?
Well, again, no, because it's that is the power of the sword. So no, even if you say, well, it's the abilities are what gives it its power. Because he talks about how like the cloak and the sword, those are two abilities that he has. So even if he never used
Hmm.
the abilities, that's fine. But even then, 1,000 years ago, it's heavily implied that his Bankai had evolved well past that, because it's not shown anywhere that he has the ability to just erupt flames out. He has that
Hmm.
Zanko no Tachi North. However, that's not even shown or described to be the same ability that he used against Yuha like 1,000 years ago.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from. He does actually mention that in the quote directly above. He's like, he still has some room to evolve, but he's saying, I think that he's saying like they thought that they understood Yamamoto's Bankai, but he's kind of dictating that his Bankai had room to evolve, so they wouldn't be able to absorb it. Is
Well,
that
yeah,
kind of
because
what you're saying?
he said like you saw the Bankai 1,000 years ago, but is this even the same Bankai? Is it even the same power? He said he didn't show the true power even 1,000 years ago. Seems as though he just like kind of negged him without going all out.
Okay, so
Even
do you think this Yamamoto would be like the same power as he was before
that he
physically?
was 1,000 years ago. Physically,
Yeah.
he like his actual muscles. I think that stated that's the only thing it has declined. However, that doesn't seem to be completely relevant because his physical muscles might be weaker. That's fine. However, his Bankai is actually shown to be more powerful now.
Hmm. Hold on, I'm looking for something. Right.
So like he might not be able to bench as much as he used to when he was young, but it seems readily apparent through all of these statements that take a very valid takeaway is that this Yamamoto would be able to bully the old Yamamoto,
Bully who?
the old Yamamoto. Old, I mean like 1,000 years ago.
Okay, here I'm getting some real quick.
So yeah, let me guess. Is your scaling essentially Kisuke to Aizen, Aizen
To
relative to
Yamamoto.
like Bankai Yamamoto?
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
so Yuha's
that would
later in like chapter 511, he's basically saying that he's gotten weak and that he could have healed his arm. So he's kind of dictating like, and logic itself, I think, would also dictate that like two armed Yamamoto would be above one armed Yamamoto.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and
In
then
terms of physical strength, yeah, because I mean that's consistent. If you swing with one arm, it's going to be weaker than if you swing with two arms. But even then, when he talks about why you were weak, he says you probably couldn't understand why you weren't one of the five I was concerned about. He's saying, I'll tell you why. It's because you didn't want to exploit humans, showing that he's gotten soft. He said, even now, you put not only the Soul Society, the world of the living, on your back, stood in front of me and lost. He says you've gotten weak. You were different before. He's saying you were a bunch of cold-hearted killers. Because of that, you were greatly to be feared. He said you used anything and everything to slay your enemies. The lives of your men weighed only as much as ash to you. He said, but that all changed when you killed us Quincy off. So when he talks about weak, I don't think it necessarily means like power in terms of like overall AP scaling. Whether he's like he can bench as much as he used to, I don't think that's relevant in this case because
Yeah.
it seems readily apparent that his AP and like spirit energy seems to be much more powerful than what it used to be. In addition to
Mm-hmm.
the fact that what he became like soft because he wasn't willing to like use Orihime to heal his arm. He wasn't willing to use Ichigo to fight against Aizen.
Right. So this Yamamoto, he's also like commenting how, and you mentioned, I'm looking at the scan, that like in the past, he's kind of just like he said that like the Gote back then were a group of cold-hearted killers, and they used everything and anything to slay off like them. But that changed when they killed all the Quincy's off and killed Yuha off. So this would also mean that he'd go like maybe Yamamoto was going as far out as he could to kill Yuha, but this Yamamoto would have gotten weaker by the time because he wouldn't use his full power to defeat Yuha.
Wait, hold on. Repeat that.
It said in this like same thing that you were talking about, this same page where he's like the Gote were a group of cold-hearted killers, and Yamamoto where it was would use anything and everything to like destroy people and to like kill them. And he said that changed when he killed all the Quincy's off. So he would have used like everything and anything he had to kill Yuha. And that changed after he killed Yuha.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
he
Said like your men's lives only weighed as much as ash to you.
right, so he wouldn't have gotten like innately weaker, but he just wouldn't use his full power against anybody.
He wouldn't be as ruthless with his tactics either, because he even stated like your men's lives weighed only as much as ash to you.
Yeah.
He'd even sacrifice his own men or kill them. It's like, oh well, in the same way that like Royd Lloyd, who was mimicking Yuha's personality, was like, oh well, it's your fault for getting caught up in my fight, and that's why you got fucked up. It's kind of how Yamamoto used to be, from what he's describing. He just wouldn't give a fuck if his own allies got killed in his fight.
Right. So he would have gotten like through the Yamamoto that we've seen from the Aizen fight and from the Yuha fight, like he has gotten weaker since his old self because we don't see like the power and everything that he used back then.
Well, mentality, sure, but even then, he said he did state I didn't use the full power of my Bankai even back then. So yeah, he didn't use his full power back then. And at that point in time, when he made the statement, he still didn't use all of the abilities of his Bankai. And even then, he was stating, is this like the same Bankai? He says that they evolve, they grow more powerful over time. And that's something that we see with him, because we see how his Bankai had changed. But then also we see that with what's his name? God, what's the guy's name? Oh well, but yeah, we see with that statement that the Bankais can evolve, because most of the other Bankai that we see, they haven't really evolved anywhere else except like Sajins, but that's under very specific circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Mayuri's, but that's partially due to time, but then also due to the fact that he modifies it.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think that Yamamoto was. I think that Yamamoto was also getting like. I don't think he was getting like quote unquote weaker, like innately weaker, because he still had all that inherent power, but he was just like almost weakening himself to fight these people. But Aizen was aware of how powerful Yamamoto was in the past when he killed Yuha off, and even if he didn't use his Bankai at full power, he'd still use all of his. You could like argue that he was still using all of his, like physical power to defeat Yuha.
Wait,
In that case, so like Aizen would be aware of that Yamamoto, and even if he's not aware of the new abilities or evolved abilities of Zanka no Tachi, he would still be like there's still even skepticism between who would win between him and the Aizen that defeated the Yuha of the past that Yuha says is like basically you could argue is a little stronger, like just closely relative.
So I'm seeing several issues here. Whenever they say Ryujin Jaka, they consistently talk about a Bankai. They refer to it in the Bankai's name. The Zanpakuto do that themselves. The
Hmm.
do that themselves. So when he's saying Ryujin Jaka, he's like, oh, of that there can be no doubt. Yours is the most ultimate. It seems more likely that he's talking about that rather than assuming he's talking about the Bankai. Meanwhile, they always refer to the Bankai by its actual name. Whenever Komamura fights against Bambietta, he says Kokujo Tengen Myo. Whenever uh fucking what's his name? Even Tsukishima, he refers to it as Senbon Zakura Kageyoshi, so does Asnot. Fucking what's his name? Refers Toshiro and Kangdu refer to it as Daigun and Hyonimaru. Mayuri always says what is it? Konjiki Ashisoki Jizo.
Hmm.
So it seems as though he's not referring to that in the greater context of the situation, of that conversation, rather. But then also, on top of that, I see no reason as to why he would know the full extent of his power.
We see people like Squad Zero members being aware of that power, and even uh who is it? Even like people like Shinsui have been able to go to like Central 46 or wherever it was, or like some like underground information storage place. And I think it also said that Aizen went there and discovered stuff about the Hogyoku. I
Um,
can't. That might. I don't remember if that was filler or not. That might have been filler relating to Kagezora. But do you know what I'm talking about? Demi, I can't hear him.
I can't hear him either. If he's saying anything.
I'll disconnect him real quick.
Yeah, I gotta finish my algebra homework.
How difficult is algebra homework? I mean, I can just do it for you. I guess whatever.
Okay, Bubbles, I'm having issues right here.
Oh, would you just offer to do his homework?
Maybe. What kind of homework
So-
we talking? How difficult this shit?
Uh,
Bubble,
it's
don't you have
algebra
assignments?
1, so probably
that's
not that
easy.
difficulty.
No, algebra.
Bubble, don't you have-
No, what? Okay, yeah, I can do
So,
that.
don't you
like,
have,
I'm on
5
this.
assignments?
Yeah,
Shut up.
I'm on this. So, Bubbles, I'm on this assignment right here, and it said, "What do you call it when someone pays back a loan quickly?" And there's a graph, and this
Oh.
graph
Why?
only goes
The hell?
in seven units
Post it.
each way.
Post it. Post the picture.
Yeah, bro.
Okay,
No,
hold up.
shut up.
But like the problem is, I can do the
term?
problems and stuff
No.
because we're doing the substitution and elimination method. But the
I
problem
remember
is, I get two answers both ways, but then
Demi's back.
answers
Demi's back.
none of
Demi's
them are on
back.
the graph. Okay.
oh, hey, hold on. I just joined back. Can you guys hear
Yeah.
me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let me fix my speaker. There we go. What was the last thing you heard me say?
I didn't hear anything you said after I brought up like the underground information storage place.
Okay, so that he went and learned about the Oin because the Hogyoku was something that Kisuke and Aizen both discovered on their own, like independently around the same time. But whenever, like again, I'm not quite convinced that he even went there and learned about his Bankai. He was never shown to have any real knowledge of his Bankai in any way whatsoever. So we can't say that he does. So that would just be an unfounded leap in logic. But then whenever he like if you talk about the other Squad Zero members, I believe there's only two that should know about his Bankai, or that at least have very solid reasons for them to know about the Bankai. But even then, um the only one who is not confirmed to have been around 1,000 years ago, or even 2,000 years ago,
It was like Curio.
yeah, Hikifune. But then Oetsu created the Zanpakuto, So if he knows about it, that's fine. That
Because
there, Oetsu,
yeah,
he was there. That makes sense. And even then, he says, "I know the name, location, and the owner of every Zanpakuto of the Soul Society." But then Ichibei, he's older than Yamamoto, so that's fine. He also named everything, so that's fine. Um, Maru literally created the Shihakusho, and then in the flashbacks, 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years before Yuha, we actually see that they were wearing the Shihakusho, so they should have been around during that time.
I was gonna bring up how yeah, I see how that ties in. I was gonna bring up how Oetsu in chapter 603 is like when he like just killed the whole shoot Stoffel, and he says, "I only have information on his power from two battles. Once he fought Genryosai 1,000 years ago, and the copy he used of himself recently."
602,
At 603.
603. Hold on.
It's first page.
Is someone recording?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Who said they were recording?
Ren.
And what relevance does this have?
Oh, I was just gonna use it before you brought up how the other like all the like most of the members of the royal guard would have been around like 1,000 years ago to possibly witness it. But Aizen, like if Owetsu has this information, then like it's probable that Aizen would have gotten that information from somewhere as well.
Again, there's no indication that he has that knowledge. So then you're just speculating that he does and saying, well, this is maybe why. That just sounds like pure headcanon to me.
I think like I'm kind of bringing that up because he's kind of like having this plot to overthrow the Soul Society and such. If that makes any sense, it's not like direct evidence for a direct claim, but it's more so just like you said, more so just like skeptical evidence.
It's speculative. The conclusion is purely speculative, and then there's just too many assumptions for this to even stand. Because then, using that same level of speculation, I could say, well, it's possible that he doesn't really know anything about it, and then he's just trying to even knowing that he does have a Bankai without knowing anything about it. He's trying to use Wonderwise to even forego the possibility of it. Because even then, even if he does know about the Bankai from 1,000 years ago, then that's fine. He just seals all the flames inside of the Zanpakuto,
Uh huh.
meaning that the Zanpakuto is just kind of useless for the time being.
Right.
But even then, he does state you would probably win, and he's talking about Ryujin Jaka, not Zanko no Tachi.
I get that.
So even if you try to say, okay, Kisuke equal to Aizen, sure, fine. I'm fine with that. But then he says, if we fought toe to toe, you'd probably win. We'll try to say, well, there's some skepticism there. Sure. But he literally appeals to the probability, saying you would most likely win. So
I'm trying to because I have like that was one of the points in my argument is I was going to go on about how there's like skepticism there, and that could mean like some sort of really loose relativity, and then Hogyoku stages and such, and then Kisuke's going. But I can't really argue that because this Bankai point with Yuha is like the basis of my argument. So if I
Well, once
concede to
you get
this, I can't argue anything else.
well, I mean, if you get to Chrysalis, okay, fine, but this is like base because what's his name? Kisuke blatantly does not scale to Chrysalis. He was holding back the whole time, and then whenever he said it's time for you to understand my power, he stops holding back. We don't know if he went full power, but he just kind of stops holding back, and then he just kind of negs the trio.
Oh, I was gonna bring up how um that's what I was asking Bubbles for earlier was this statement where Aizen's like we're no longer equal anymore, and then you could bring up like Kisuke relative to base Aizen, and then loosely relative to a Bankai Yama, and then you could try to use Kisuke's Bankai from there to argue something.
I'm not convinced that it would be referring to Bankai Yama. It seems as though it's most likely referring to Shikai Yamamoto because he does specifically mention the Shikai, and it is consistent for them to talk about these Zanpakuto in regards to the specific form because they do have specific names and the names carry a lot of weight. Seems as though even the Quincy recognized that names have power.
Well, Aizen in that case was just referring to the Zanpakuto itself. He wasn't like referring to its Bankai. He didn't like have to actually specifically refer to its Bankai stage. He was just saying, his Zanpakuto. He's like, Ryujin Jaka is the strongest Zanpakuto, but that wouldn't discard the point that he could be talking about Zanka no Tachi.
Well, again, they're totally different. Again, and it sounds really dumb if this were any other series. They are literally two different names, and the two different names are two different entities. Because even whenever Ichigo goes and speaks with his Zanpakuto, he's like, "Why do you call me Zangetsu? I understand. You haven't been here in your Bankai form before. I'm Tensa Zangetsu." Or even when they talk about all these other captains talk about their Zanpakuto, he's like, "No, this is Kokujo Tengenmyo. This is Daiguren Hyorimaru. This is Konjiki Ashisoki Jizo."
I get that, but that's when they're actually like specifically referring to their Bankai in that stage. But in this case, he'd just be referring to the Zanpakuto in general itself.
Well, again, you just say your Zanpakuto. He just says Ryujin Jaka is the ultimate. Again, so I don't see any reason for this to be referring to that, and that takes more assumptions. Because right here, I don't need to take any assumptions, or rather any assumptions in the way of making some type of positive assertion, just to take this at face value, saying Ryujin Jaka is the ultimate Zanpakuto. Of that, there can be no doubt. For you to say that he's referring to his Bankai, you'd have to assume he knows about the Bankai power, assume that he's referring to the Bankai, despite the fact that they're named differently. And Bleach characters usually are pretty particular about the names. See what I mean? There seems to be more assumptions with that, and they seem to be unfounded assumptions.
Damn it. Okay. There's nothing else I can really argue. I concede. That was a good debate.